George Reyes, step away from there.
Are you going to tell me what's happening right now?
The iPads and laptops.
This operation had been in the works for nearly a year. George Reyes walked right into it, and the GPS tracker in his front seat was already transmitting his location to federal investigators.
Laptops you've been pulling off the belt for the last 4 months.
Are you hearing this? Do you know what they're talking about? Because I have
Three
absolutely
GPS-marked devices crossed your station 40 minutes
Someone
ago.
please
The iPad sitting on the passenger seat of George Reyes's Toyota Camry had been transmitting its exact GPS coordinates to a San Francisco police detective for the last 38 minutes. Reyes thought it was just another tablet from another suitcase. He did not know it was a decoy planted by investigators, fitted with a hidden tracker, and routed through the baggage system specifically so it would end up in his hands. 2 felony counts, 50-plus victims, $32,366 in restitution owed to 21 passengers who could even be identified. By the time the case was filed, every shift he had worked at San Francisco International Airport for the previous several months had become part of an evidence file with his name on it. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. The next time you check a bag at the airport, do you actually know who handles it after it disappears down that belt? Most of us never think about it. We zip it shut, slap the tag on the handle, and walk away trusting the system. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever opened a checked bag at baggage claim and found something missing? I want to know. And if you're new here, this channel covers cases that mainstream outlets drop after one 20-second segment. Hit subscribe so the next one doesn't slip past you. George Manuel Reyes was born in 1968 at Seton Medical Center in Daly City, California, the second of 3 children in a working-class household 3 miles south of the San Francisco City line. His father, Manuel Reyes, was a transmission mechanic at the Chevrolet dealership on El Camino Real in South San Francisco. His mother, Esperanza, cleaned rooms for 14 years at the Airport Hyatt off Bayshore Boulevard, the same hotel where pilots and flight attendants laid over between segments out of SFO. The family lived in a 2-bedroom rental on Sullivan Avenue in Daly City, with a small concrete patio behind the kitchen and a chain-link fence dividing them from the neighbors. George was an airport kid before he ever set foot on the ramp. From their patio, when the fog was thin, you could hear the engines spooling up across the bay. His mother brought home laminated pilot wings from the gift shop at the Hyatt and pinned them above the kitchen sink. When she had a Saturday off, she would drive George and his older sister to Muscle Rock Park, hand them a paper sack with bologna sandwiches and Capri Sun, and let them sit on the headland watching the United and Pan Am jets bank low over the Pacific on final approach into runway 28. George would point at the tails and tell his sister which airline was which. He almost never missed. He attended Westmore High School in Daly City. He graduated in 1986. His yearbook entry described him as easygoing, reliable, the guy you wanted on your shift. His auto shop teacher wrote on his final report that he was punctual, mechanically inclined, and a calming presence in a classroom of teenagers who otherwise would have torn each other apart. He played outfield on a recreational league baseball team that practiced at Westlake Park. He worked Friday and Saturday nights at the Tower Records on Geneva Avenue, restocking the country and rock sections after the store closed at midnight. College was never really on the table. After graduation, George took warehouse work at a freight forwarder in South San Francisco, lifting pallets, loading box trucks, learning the grammar of the loading dock. The pay was $8 an hour. He saved enough by 1990 to put a down payment on a used Toyota Corolla. In 1991, a cousin who worked the ramp at SFO told him a baggage contractor was hiring. George applied on a Tuesday, interviewed on a Friday, and started the following Monday at $6.75 an hour, throwing bags for a regional carrier on the South Concourse. He worked for the contractor for 5 years. He learned the rhythm of the apron, the way a turn happened, the way you ducked under the wing as the tug pulled the dolly into position, the way you read a bag tag in the half-second it passed under the conveyor belt. He learned which carts went to which gate, which flights were always late, and which lead servicemen would chew you out for stacking heavy bags on top of soft ones. In 1996, United Airlines hired him directly as a ramp serviceman. His starting wage was $11.20 an hour. He was 28 years old. He married Sandra Aguirre in 1994 at Our Lady of the Visitation in Daly City. The reception was held in the parish hall, folding tables draped in white plastic, a sheet cake from Luca's Deli, a DJ playing Selena and Bryan Adams in the same set. 2 children followed, a daughter named Lucia in 1996 and a son named Hector in 1999. The family moved into a small stucco house off Sneath Lane in San Bruno, less than 2 miles from the perimeter of the airport. From the front porch, George could see the lights of the SFO control tower at night. For a long time, the work was steady, and the work was honest. United Airlines gave him a 6-year service pin in 2002 and a 15-year service pin in 2011, both displayed on a corkboard in his garage. His supervisor evaluations were unremarkable in the way that careers are usually unremarkable. He consistently met expectations. He worked well with the morning shift. He demonstrated initiative during the holiday surge in 2007 when staffing was short. He was promoted to lead ramp serviceman in 2004. By the time the events of this story took place, George Reyes had been moving other people's suitcases for almost 22 years. That trust would not survive the year. San Francisco International Airport handles about 45 million passengers a year. On a peak summer day, the airport processes more than 140,000 pieces of checked baggage. Each one of those bags begins the same way. A passenger walks up to a counter, hands their suitcase across, watches it disappear behind a curtain or down a belt, and then walks toward the security line trusting that the bag will reappear at the carousel at the other end of the flight. That trust is the entire foundation of commercial air travel. Without it, the system does not function. What the passenger does not see is everything that happens between the counter and the carousel. The bag goes on to an inclined conveyor. It passes through a CTX scanner the size of a small car, where TSA inspectors look for explosives and prohibited items. From there, it enters a sortation system that routes it by airline, flight number, and final destination. It rides through tunnels under the terminal. It comes out the other side in what the industry calls the baggage makeup area, a cavernous, fluorescent-lit room where carts are staged for each departing flight. That makeup area is where the system relies almost entirely on the integrity of the workers inside it. There are cameras in some zones, but the coverage is not complete, and the angles are not designed to track an individual worker through a full shift. The bags are not under continuous video. They sit in carts, sometimes for 30 or 40 minutes, while ramp servicemen pull tags, verify flight numbers, and prepare the cart for its run out to the aircraft. A bag at that stage has been screened by TSA. It has been deemed safe. From that point until it is loaded into the belly of the airplane, the only people touching it are the ramp employees. Once the cart is built, a baggage tug operator hooks it up and drives a train of 3 or 4 dollies across the apron to the assigned gate. There, ramp servicemen unload the bags by hand onto a belt loader that feeds them up into the cargo hold of the aircraft. A loader works inside the belly itself, stacking bags by destination and weight distribution. When the door is closed and the seal is signed off, the bag has been handled by, depending on the route, somewhere between 4 and 7 different employees from check-in to wheels up. Almost none of those handlers are watched in real time. The cargo hold of a parked aircraft, in particular, is one of the most private workspaces at an airport. It is dark. It is enclosed. There is one way in and one way out. A loader inside the hold is, for the duration of his task, alone with every bag on that flight. That privacy is the gap. That gap is what George Reyes had spent 2 decades learning the dimensions of. He had loaded thousands of those holds. He knew exactly how long it took to stack a full bank of bags. He knew exactly how long he could pause inside one without anyone outside the hold thinking anything of it. And he knew that nothing, no camera, no supervisor, no fellow worker, was watching him while he was in there. The pattern, when investigators eventually reconstructed it, looked like this. Reyes worked the morning shift, clocking in before 5 a.m. and working through the heavy outbound bank of flights to the East Coast and beyond. His assigned position rotated. Some days he worked the makeup area. Some days he worked the ramp. Some days he was inside the cargo hold of a 737 or a 757 stacking bags by destination code. He did not steal from every bag. He did not steal every shift. The thefts were targeted and they were precise. He was looking for one category of item: small, high-value consumer electronics and accessories, iPads, MacBooks, digital cameras, designer handbags, items that had a clear resale market and that fit easily under a sweatshirt or inside the inner pocket of a ramp jacket. Items that, if reported missing, would generate a claim, but a claim that would be lost in the statistical noise of a system that processes tens of thousands of bags a day. The mechanics of the theft were almost banal. A bag would come down the chute into the makeup area. Reyes would lift it. He would feel the weight, scan the tag, and if the shape was right, he would unzip the outer pocket. Most travelers pack their electronics in the outer pocket of a roller bag. He knew that because he had been watching the contents of suitcases for over 20 years. If something was there, he would slide it out. If it was an iPad in a slim case, he would tuck it inside his jacket against the small of his back. If it was a laptop, he would carry it to a row of personal lockers used by ramp workers and stash it there until the end of his shift. He would re-zip the bag. He would set it back in its cart. The bag would continue on to its flight. The first incident that investigators could later document with confidence was on a Wednesday morning in February of 2013. A passenger flying from San Francisco to Boston on United Flight 106 had checked a black roller bag at the counter at 4:52 a.m. The bag contained, among other things, a third-generation iPad with a leather smart cover, still in its retail box, intended as a 40th birthday gift for the passenger's wife. When the bag arrived at Logan, the iPad was gone. The pocket had been re-zipped. Nothing else was disturbed. That passenger filed a claim. So did another passenger that same day on a different flight. So did 3 more passengers across the following week. None of those individuals knew each other. None of them filed in the same channel. But each of those claims fed into the same database at United's Central Baggage Service Office. By early March, The volume of claims involving small electronics on outbound flights from SFO had crossed a threshold that no operations director could ignore. There were dozens of complaints. Some were vague. Some were specific to the dollar. A camera here. A laptop there. A MacBook Air valued at $1,200. A Canon DSLR with 2 lenses. An iPad. Another iPad. Another iPad. And as the complaints piled up, Reyes did not slow down. He escalated. He started taking items from bags on inbound flights as well, working the cargo holds of aircraft that had just arrived from Honolulu and Houston and Chicago, pulling tablets out of carry-ons that had been gate-checked at the last minute. He started bringing a small cloth tote to work, folded inside his lunch bag, so that he had something to carry the day's haul out to his car. His Toyota Camry sat in the employee parking lot a quarter-mile from the terminal. At the end of his shift, he would walk out of the operations building with the tote slung over his shoulder, hop the employee shuttle, and drive home to San Bruno with the property of strangers in his back seat. He did not appear to be living a lavish life. He did not buy a boat. He did not take expensive vacations. He did not even buy a new car. The financial dimension of the theft was, in its own way, almost more disturbing than a flashy embezzlement would have been. Reyes was not stealing because he was greedy in the obvious sense. He was stealing because the access was there, the supervision was not, and once he started, he simply did not stop. The signs that should have been visible, to his coworkers, to his supervisors, to the airline, were missed across a window of months. Other ramp servicemen on his crew later told investigators that they had occasionally seen Reyes lingering in the makeup area on bags assigned to other flights. They had not thought anything of it. He had been there for 2 decades. He was the guy you trusted to know what he was doing. No one watched him. No one needed to. That was the assumption. That was the entire problem. The catalyst was not a single victim. It was a spreadsheet. In late March of 2013, United Airlines loss prevention team in Chicago pulled together a months-running tally of every passenger complaint involving stolen contents on outbound SFO flights. The number had crossed 50. Each complaint had a flight number. Each flight number had a manifest. Each manifest mapped to a shift roster. Each shift roster mapped to the ramp employees who had handled the bags in the makeup area and at the gate. When analysts cross-referenced the rosters, one name appeared more often than any other. He had been on duty during nearly every shift that produced a theft complaint. He had been assigned on multiple occasions to the specific flights from which iPads had subsequently disappeared. The statistical pattern was not subtle. The same employee was present, over and over again, at the precise points in the chain of custody where the bags had been compromised. That employee was George Reyes. United Airlines did not confront him. United Airlines did not even mention the pattern to him. Instead, in early April, the airline contacted the San Francisco Police Department's Airport Bureau and asked detectives to take over the investigation. The decision was a clean one. An internal investigation would have run the risk of tipping Reyes off. And given his 22 years on the job, he would have spotted a sudden interest in his shifts immediately. An internal investigation also would not have produced criminal charges. If the airline wanted accountability, and it did, the case had to be built by sworn officers who could obtain a search warrant and make an arrest. The detective assigned to the case was a veteran of the Airport Bureau who had worked baggage theft cases on and off for years. He understood the geometry of the ramp. He understood the gap in the surveillance. He understood that the only way to catch a handler in the act of stealing was to give him something to steal, something that would document its own theft. Surveillance video would never be enough on its own. The makeup area cameras did not cover every angle, and a defense attorney would tear apart any case built on grainy footage of a worker who could plausibly claim he had been doing his job. The plan came together over the course of 3 weeks in April. Detectives selected several iPads and a small assortment of women's purses to use as decoys. The iPads were chosen because they matched the model and generation that had been most frequently reported missing. Each decoy iPad was fitted with a covert GPS tracker capable of reporting its location in real time to a receiver in the detective's vehicle. The purses were prepared the same way. The decoys were packed inside ordinary-looking roller bags. The bags were tagged with destinations on outbound flights that, according to United's data, would be handled in the makeup area where Reyes was working that day. The sting was set for a Tuesday morning in May. Reyes clocked in at his usual time. He did not know that the bag he was about to lift had been built that morning at the San Francisco Police Airport substation. He did not know that the tablet inside was talking to a laptop in an unmarked Crown Victoria parked 1 row from his Camry. And he did not know that the case against him was about to right itself. The decoy bags entered the system at around 5:15 a.m. They rode the belts. They passed through TSA screening. They emerged in the makeup area and were routed to a cart staged for a flight on which Reyes had been assigned as a loader. For the next 40 minutes, 2 detectives sat in a Crown Victoria in the employee lot watching a small dot on a laptop screen. The dot did not move. The dot was the GPS-tagged iPad, lying in the outer pocket of a black roller bag, sitting in a cart in the SFO makeup area. Then, at 5:58 a.m., the dot moved. It did not move in the direction of an aircraft. It did not move toward the belt loader. It moved laterally, away from the cart, in the direction of the personal locker bank used by the morning shift ramp crew. The detectives watched the dot stop at the locker bank for approximately 4 minutes. Then the dot stayed in place for the rest of Reyes' shift. At the end of his shift at 2:15 p.m., the dot moved again. It exited the operations building. It boarded the employee shuttle. It crossed the employee lot. It came to rest in row F, slot 11, the parking space in which George Reyes' Toyota Camry was registered. The dot then began traveling north on the airport access road and merged onto Highway 101. The detectives followed at a distance. The Camry exited at San Bruno Avenue. It turned right on El Camino Real. It turned left onto a residential street. And there, in the 1800 block of a quiet cul-de-sac, the Camry pulled into the driveway of a stucco single-story home. The dot stopped. The driver's side door opened. George Reyes stepped out of the car. He never had a chance to go inside the house. The search warrant that detectives executed that afternoon on the basis of the GPS evidence was the moment the full scope of the theft became visible. The Camry yielded the decoy iPad and a decoy purse, sitting in plain view on the passenger seat. The house yielded considerably more. In a closet off the hallway, investigators found a Rubbermaid container holding 12 additional iPads in various models and generations. In the garage, a workbench drawer contained 4 MacBook laptops, 2 of which still had their owners' boot screens locked with personal photos as wallpapers. In a hall closet, 3 Canon and Nikon DSLR cameras, a Sony camcorder, 2 iPods, a Kindle, and a leather coach handbag with the original passenger's California driver's license still inside the wallet pocket. There were also receipts. Reyes had begun selling some of the items at suspiciously low prices, through a Craigslist account he had been using under a slightly altered name. Detectives recovered the account through subpoena. The listings tracked, almost item for item, with the things that passengers had been reporting missing from their bags. The most damaging piece of evidence, though, was the simplest: a spiral-bound notebook on a shelf in the garage. Inside, in Reyes's own handwriting, was a running tally of items by category and date: iPad, Feb 14, laptop, Feb 21, camera, March 4th, iPad, March 6th, iPad, March 11. He had been keeping his own records. We're about to get into the courtroom phase of this case. Before we do, if you've made it this far, you already know this channel covers stories that mainstream outlets file under a 30-second blurb and move on. Subscribe so the next one doesn't slip past you. We do this every single week. The confrontation happened in the driveway. It was 2:48 p.m. on a Tuesday in May. The light in San Bruno that time of year is bright and flat. The kind of light that makes a person squint when they step out of their car. Reyes had just shut the driver's side door. The unmarked Crown Victoria pulled in behind him, blocking the Camry from backing out, and two plainclothes detectives stepped out of the unmarked car simultaneously. The lead detective held up a badge. Detective: George Reyes, San Francisco Police. Don't move. Keep your hands where I can see them. Reyes did not move. He stood with his car keys in his right hand. His face went pale in a way that several witnesses later described as instant, not gradual, not delayed. Pale all at once. Reyes: What is this? What is happening? Detective: We have reason to believe there's stolen property in your vehicle, Mr. Reyes. We have a warrant. Please set the keys on the hood of the car. Reyes: I don't know what you're talking about. I just got off shift. Detective: Set the keys on the hood, please. Reyes set the keys on the hood. The second detective moved around to the passenger side and opened the door. The decoy iPad was visible in the front passenger seat, sitting on top of a black cloth tote bag. The detective lifted it, turned it over, and read the small GPS tracker label affixed to the inside of the cover. Detective: This iPad was placed in a checked bag at SFO this morning. It has a tracker on it. It just spent 8 hours inside the cargo operations building, and then it drove home with you. Do you want to tell me how it got from a passenger suitcase into the passenger seat of your car? Reyes did not answer. He looked at the iPad. He looked at the detective. He looked at the front door of his own house. His wife had heard the commotion and was standing just inside the screen door, not yet stepping out. He looked back at the detective. Reyes: I want a lawyer. Those were the last words he spoke at the scene. He was placed under arrest, read his rights, and walked to the back of the unmarked car in handcuffs. His wife stepped out onto the porch and stood with one hand over her mouth as the Crown Victoria backed slowly down the driveway and turned out of the cul-de-sac. Neighbors watched from behind their curtains. None of them came outside. George Reyes was booked into San Mateo County Jail in Redwood City on the night of his arrest. He was charged the following morning by the San Mateo County District Attorney's Office with 2 felony counts of embezzlement and 1 count of possession of stolen property. The case was assigned to District Attorney Steve Wagstaffe's office for prosecution. Bail was set, and Reyes posted it within 48 hours, returning home to San Bruno on the condition that he surrender his airport security clearance and not return to the operations area of SFO under any circumstances. United Airlines fired him before the paperwork on his arrest had even reached the prosecutor's desk. The investigation continued after the arrest. Detectives worked through the inventory of stolen property recovered from the Camry, the garage, the closets, and the workbench. They cataloged each item. They cross-referenced each item, where possible, against the database of passenger complaints. They reached out to 21 individual victims whose property could be identified with certainty, through serial numbers, through engraving, through original receipts, through identifying contents like family photographs still saved on the device. Those victims were spread across the country. A retired school teacher from Boston whose camera contained 11 years of grandchildren photographs. A software engineer from Austin whose MacBook held an entire month of unbacked up code. A college student from Chicago whose iPad had been a graduation gift from her grandmother, who had died 3 weeks before the flight. A married couple from Honolulu whose camcorder held the only footage of their daughter's first steps. 21 victims could be matched. Investigators estimated, based on the scope of the complaints, that the true number of passengers who had lost property to George Reyes was at least 50, and likely higher. Many of those victims would never see their property again, because Reyes had already sold it through Craigslist before the investigation closed in. The case moved quickly. Reyes's defense attorney, a private criminal defense lawyer based in Burlingame, recognized early on that the GPS evidence and the contents of the home search left almost no room for a trial defense. There was no question of identity. There was no question of intent. There was no question of whether the property had been stolen. The only question was what kind of sentence the court would impose. The defense filed a motion to suppress portions of the search, which was denied. The defense then opened plea discussions with the District Attorney's Office. On August 1, 2013, George Reyes appeared in San Mateo County Superior Court before a judge of the Criminal Division. He entered a plea of no contest to felony embezzlement and to theft. His attorney spoke briefly. The prosecutor spoke briefly. Then the victims, or those who had elected to attend, were given the opportunity to address the court. One of the victims who spoke was the retired Boston school teacher. She had flown out specifically for the hearing at her own expense. She told the court that the camera Reyes had stolen contained the only photographs she had of her late husband's final birthday, taken 6 weeks before he died of a stroke. She told the court that the loss of the camera was, in a way she had not expected, a second loss of him. She told the court that she did not hate Reyes, but that she wanted him to understand what he had taken when he had unzipped that outer pocket. She said this without raising her voice. She said this looking directly at him. Reyes did not look up from the table. The judge addressed the courtroom before announcing the sentence. He noted that the case did not involve violence and that the dollar amount, while significant, was not in the range of a major financial crime. He noted, however, that the breach of trust was substantial. He noted that Reyes had occupied a position of access that depended entirely on the integrity of the worker. He noted that the public, meaning every traveler who had ever surrendered a suitcase at a counter, had a right to expect that the people inside that system would not exploit it. He said that the sentence had to reflect both the limits of the charges and the seriousness of the betrayal. George Reyes was sentenced to 6 months in county jail. He was placed on 3 years of supervised probation. He was ordered to pay $32,366 in restitution to 21 identified victims, with individual amounts ranging from $150 to $6,000, depending on the value of the property each had lost. He was barred from any future employment in airport baggage operations and from any position involving custody of the property of others. He served his county jail sentence at the McGuire Correctional Facility in Redwood City. He was released to probation in early 2014. He never worked at an airport again. His name remains on a no-rehire list maintained jointly by the major carriers and the airport authority. The locker he had used at SFO was cleared out the day after his arrest, the contents bagged as evidence, and the lock cut with a pair of bolt cutters. The most lasting legacy of the case was not the sentence. It was procedural. In the months after the arrest, SFO expanded its surveillance coverage in the baggage makeup area, installed additional cameras in the cargo hold belt loader zones, and adjusted the locker policy for ramp workers to require random inspection of personal belongings at shift end. Industry trade publications cited the case as a turning point in baggage handler oversight. Travelers who pass through San Francisco today move through a system that is, in small and largely invisible ways, more watched than it was, because of one man, one Camry, and 40-plus suitcases nobody was watching. That story still haunts me. But the case right here on your screen might be the most outrageous we've ever covered. Click it now.